The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, episode 129.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the Discovery's latest episode from Star Trek Discovery called Scavengers. And joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Stika. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Folks, we would ask you to share the podcast with your friends to help us grow this community of listeners and reach out to more Star Trek fans. The more listeners we have, the better the show becomes. It's a fact. So we would really appreciate it. The main way we have of getting the show out to new listeners is when you recommend it to others. So we really do appreciate that. All right. So as I mentioned, this is called Scavengers. It is the fifth or sixth episode? Sixth episode of the season, I think. Or at least it's production number 6. They play with the production numbers, but we're well into the season now, and we start with now that they're at Federation headquarters, they've been accepted back into Starfleet. Discovery, which is now 900 years old, needs to be upgraded a little bit. So
they retrofit it.
They retrofit it. Now, this is the thing I'm wondering: was Discovery visibly retrofitted in the short track Calypso? Because
no, it still looked like the original 1031, NCC 1031. There was no A on it at all.
Well, but it's that's what I mean. It's like the most visible upgrade is these detached nacelles, right?
Right.
Do we know? I don't remember.
What I mean is they used the original Discovery model. They didn't show it as a retrofitted ship.
Okay. They didn't.
They can always fix that in one way or another.
Right. That's right. They can
just
put it back.
Sub in new visual effects.
That's true.
Well, we still don't know for 100% sure that short trek is this timeline or something like that.
Right.
know?
That's true. They can always mess with that.
They could, but I think we're meant to understand that.
Yeah.
They will have a lot of mad fans if that's not what they're heading for.
Yeah. Like you can't just you can't just start kicking things out of timelines and you're getting yourself into a potential world of hurt. Yes. You gotta. I mean, the Kelvin timeline is already a problem. Let's just deal with that.
I mean, to be fair, to kind of counter argument is they could say, well, because it's now this living matter that can do things like cause the warp nacelles to separate and stuff like that, that the Spear Data, once it took over Discovery, decided, you know what, I want to look like I did when Discovery was brand new.
Yeah,
that's possible. Now,
I mean, it could be as simple as that.
Speaking of timelines, just a tiny bit of a digression. There is speculation among fans that when Discovery jumped forward, it moved to the Kelvin timeline. This is the timeline of the J.J. Abrams movie and following. What do you think of that? Does it matter? Does it make a difference to us?
If that's what gets you through the night, fine, but they haven't established that in any way on screen, and the licensing deals would suggest the opposite.
Right.
And I mean, in this episode, you see a TNG era phaser.
That's right.
So, I mean, one of the scraps was a TNG era phaser. There's a lot of fans who they want so badly that Discovery is not canon of the TOS, TNG, DS9 Voyager timeline.
Right.
Sorry, folks. It is.
Deal with it. Okay.
Yep.
Until they say otherwise on screen. That's the way it is. All right. So we begin with this meeting of Starfleet captains in Starfleet headquarters. Admiral Vance handing out assignments. It's like an episode of The Office where Michael's handing out new assignments at the beginning. But Discovery is not being sent off to one of these distant places to do a job. It's staying put And it's actually a valid military reason. Discovery can go anywhere at a moment's notice. Therefore, you are our quick response force. You are a rapid response ship.
I like Saru. He's like, immediately, it's like, Admiral, we could do all these missions and be back in time for tea. Why aren't you using us?
Right.
You know?
And so I do like that. And, and also Vance has apparently just revealing now to anyone else about the spore drive's existence and the potential ramifications. So that is a huge strategic advantage that they now have and need to reverse engineer, frankly, for the rest of their ships.
And he tells them, the other captains, to keep it to themselves, that it's not to go out of this room.
Right.
Which really is not the way you conduct a classified briefing, but whatever. They're pretty informal in Starfleet.
Apparently now they are, now that there's like 8 of them. So there is also a scene where the crew is getting their new holo badges, their new badges that are
Mother
now
boxes.
Yes. They're communicators, tricorders, and personal transporters all in one, which
as well as holographic pads,
yes.
which I was not impressed with, because when they put it in pad mode, so that's the equivalent of an iPad.
Yeah.
And they tap the thing on their chest and it puts out this big holographic display 2 feet from their face.
Right.
Or 18 inches from their face. I understand all of these 3D wave your hands around displays are nonsense. They're meant to look cool, but you wouldn't really design an interface like that.
Not practical.
What they would have, if anything, would be that it either something invasive of your biology, or at least, like a cyberlink in your head, or they would have holographic heads-up contact lenses.
Right.
But this display is there for us to see as an audience, but I don't think the visual effect is successful.
It's not all that great, like better than anything else we've already seen. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, if you're just slapping this thing on your chest, I mean, that made sense in the TOS era, in the TNG era, when it's just functioning as a communicator.
Yeah.
But now that it's a mother box, and that reference is from comics. It's from Jack Kirby's New Gods 4th World Series. Mother box is a living computer that can do anything you need.
Yeah.
And when the first iPhone came out, I said, this is generation 1 mother box technology.
Right.
so this is a few generations later. But if all you're doing is slapping this thing on your chest, how does it know what mode to go into?
Well,
there's a hand gesture.
They do show it, like their hand gesture. So like when they want to do the iPad mode, they move their hand, they touch it and then move away from it.
But if you're Sicilian, it doesn't work. It's terrible.
Yeah. Well, just because you're constantly moving your hand,
turning it
constantly going in and out, in and out, in and out.
Yeah. Well, no wonder Linus has trouble with it.
I love that the rest of the episode, Linus is like personal transporter jumping around the ship like crazy.
And first couple of times he's kind of chuckling. By the end of the episode, he's like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, just because
he's getting frustrated.
He can't get where he's trying to go. Yeah, I thought that was funny. Read the manual. So they, in the midst of all this, Booker's ship shows up. Cleveland Booker.
We should mention why the Discovery is not given a mission today. It's because Vance needs them to stay at Starfleet headquarters to serve as a rapid responder, because there is a tense situation with the Emerald Chain, Orion Andorian criminal
syndicate
thing.
Yes.
And that may blow up at any moment. And if it does, they need to be ready to go at a moment's notice.
Right. That's right. They have for 12 hours, by the way, for 12 hours.
Yeah. And it sounds like that the Emerald Chain is this sector's
big bad
syndicate of the Orions and Andorians, so which leads, of course, the idea that there are probably other groups, other mobs of them somewhere else.
Crime families, basically. That's if you want to think of it, think of the mafia, like they have their areas of control. So I was saying Booker's ship shows up without him on board, and he's left a message that he was investigating a rumor that one of the black boxes that Burnham was looking for, so the black box from a ship that was destroyed in the burn, because she's looking for data about the burn. He found a rumor of one being in this one place, and he went there, and he had programmed the ship to go find her if he wasn't back on board within 24 hours and to deliver this message.
And the cat.
And the cat.
You got to have the cat.
And yet farther down the line, he's going to say, I didn't ask for you to come get me. It's like,
well, why?
What was the purpose of your message?
Right.
You send me a message saying I've disappeared mysteriously, but I found this thing you want, and you don't expect me to come, and I'm in a dangerous situation, and you don't expect me to come get you?
Right. Yeah. And so there's another flaw in the writing in a minute, but I want to address the whole thing. So Burnham's theory is that the burn didn't happen all at once, instantaneously throughout the galaxy, as they've been told, but that it had a point of origin that can be traced. So if the timing on the ships, if you can look at where, what time it happened, the explosion, and the location of the ship where it was, you can triangulate where its point of origin was. And so that's what she's trying to do by collecting
in theory, these black boxes are so synchronized down to the microsecond that if all of them immediately went boom at the same microsecond, then yes, it was a universe-wide thing. But if there's like a ripple effect where it went from, this one was at 0.1 and this one was at 0.2 and this one was at 0.3, then you can say, okay, we can start triangulating where it happened.
Right.
And we should make it clear because black box can be used in different senses, like black box radiation. We're talking black boxes like on an airplane,
right?
The flight data recorders that you can use to determine what happened to a ship when it crashed or exploded or whatever.
Right.
And she's already found 2 of these things, and they have different times of detonation on them.
Right.
So that suggests the burn did not happen instantaneously. And if they can find a third, they'll have what they need to triangulate the point of origin.
In theory. Yeah.
And that gives us,
and we do see her getting one when it's that sequence was the beginning of the 3rd episode where it shows her going through her year and she's being handed this thing that looks like a large pen or a flashlight.
Yeah.
It says NCC 14774 something, and that's what they are. They basically look like a giant, like a large pocket flashlight.
Cardassian data rod, maybe?
Yeah.
Something
like that.
Looked to me like a big screw you'd buy in a hardware store with the ridges filed off.
Yeah. And black boxes are theoretically indestructible, quote unquote. And also a motivation is established here. She thinks the Federation cannot be stabilized until the cause of the burn is determined. Like we can't save the Federation until we figure out why. There's no explanation why she thinks this, what this has to do with anything, but she's come up with this theory.
You can kind of headcanon it of, well, this Federation can't really reestablish itself until they figure out that, first of all, it's not going to happen again.
Right.
And then also then they can start redeveloping the infrastructure like the subspace relays and things like that.
But also, if someone was responsible for it, they are an enemy of the Federation, and therefore they will not let us reestablish. But again, they don't say any of this, so it's sort of left out there.
It's a hole in the writing. It's not necessarily a flaw, but it in the sense of a mistake, but it's a hole.
Yeah. So Saru tells her, no, we can't go get Booker because we're on alert. We're the quick reaction force. We're ready to jump at any time within the next 12 hours to Argith. And so at this point I said, so then why not tell Vance about this new information? So as the boss, he can maybe modify his orders or come up to do 2 things at once.
Or Burnham could wait 12 hours because it's already been 3 weeks
apparently
since Book disappeared. He's either alive or not. 12 hours probably is not going to make the difference.
Exactly. It's going to take 3 weeks to get back, right? Or does it? Or because it doesn't. This is the flaw I was talking about, this timing flaw. And Star Trek has got, well, I don't even know lately, but Star Trek has had these timing flaws in it for a long time where the writers seem to ignore their own time frames that they establish for themselves. So it took 3 weeks for the ship to find her. So maybe it's been wandering around the galaxy looking for her. And that's why it took 12 hours, but it only takes 3 hours to get back to this planet called Hunha where Book is. I don't know. It annoyed me.
I mean, I could see the idea of that the ship was looking for her because, as they said, if this ship showed up here knew it needed to be here, but maybe it took some time for the ship to figure it out somehow.
It's like a Roomba
track her.
wandering around the house. Yeah,
exactly.
As opposed to the intelligent programming, which is go straight back to Starfleet headquarters where you last saw her and where she'll be reporting in.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think he was ever at Starfleet headquarters. He was dropped off at Earth.
Yeah, he jumped off at Earth.
So I mean, that's why I said it. Maybe it was more like the ship was trying to trace her down or something, and that's why it took so long.
Again, it's implied but never said. So it's I mean, exactly. we can assume. Anyway, she goes to Burnham is the new Burnham is obviously going to disobey orders because this is who she is now, and the only person on board that she's going to go to, she knows will help her, is Georgiou, obviously. So she goes to Georgiou to go with her. And she knows she's going to undermine Saru's legitimacy by going off the reservation like this again. There's something wrong with Burnham.
Tells her.
Yeah. There's something wrong with Burnham, and Georgiou knows it. Like, something has changed in Burnham in this past year, and whether it's something actively wrong or just she's changed as a person enough, but this is not the Burnham we've known. This is
stupid and impulsive.
Right.
This is you would never get into Starfleet if you had this basic kind of personality problem that prevents you from following orders because you've just got to go get your non-boyfriend and can't wait 12 hours when that's not going to make a difference.
Right.
Well, don't you know that there's a ticking clock that they don't know about at this point because of him being reassigned to one of those ships in a certain period of time. But of course, they don't know that because they don't find that out until they get there.
Right. Now,
but you still got that.
To be fair, Burnham doesn't get away with this, so there is a consequence that will be levied later. Somewhat. There should be more consequence, but she's the lead character, so you can't cashier her.
She should be out on her butt.
Yeah, she should. Yep. But they're not going to because she's the lead character. Anyway, they take Bookship. There is a nice scene where Georgiou confronts Burnham with you're in love with him. This is your little love nest here, and she keeps needling her about it. And Burnham's like, no. And then she has that cool, the funny Freudian slip where I think she says this is where he loves instead of lives.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I never loved here.
Yeah, I never lived here.
I like how Georgiou is in critiquing Burnham's romantic interactions is like talking about how the Ash Tyler thing that was always going to end in disaster, and now you're hot for the Blob Whisperer, and she interprets the Blob Whisperer as a reference to the trance worm,
right?
And she said, "No, I meant the cat,
right? The big fat Maine Coon cat,
the cat that couldn't get lost because it produces its own gravitational force."
Yes, that must be a Maine Coon cat, which is a particular variety of cat. Yep. And I've encountered Maine Coon cats. Those things are huge. They must have like crossbred with bobcats at some point. But those are cool.
They got some of them. They got the little tufts on the end of the ear, so it's possible.
Yeah,
but Georgiou is also having flashbacks of a disturbing and disorienting nature.
Yes, a la Ash, frankly. That's sort of, I don't know. I don't think it's the same thing. I don't think she's a hidden Klingon or whatever, but it's sort of, it's something that they've used before with Ash, and it's what this cataleptic moment is where she's frozen and she's having these involuntary flashbacks, which might be due to glasses from that last episode.
Yeah. Oh, I think it is due to Mr. Glasses from the previous episode.
Yeah.
And it looks like she's remembering someone that she loved that was killed brutally, and she's touching because she's calling to him. Right. And, touching the blood in her hands and things like that. And
I was wondering, and I didn't freeze frame these to analyze them, but I was wondering if it might be she's being implanted with memories from the Prime Georgiou.
From the one from this universe.
Yes, yeah.
She's merging with her consciousness of some sort because she spent so much time here. You become the person.
They show the Terran symbols and things like that.
Okay, then it may be something from the mirror universe that I just went by too quick for me to catch.
Yeah, it looks like he's wearing, this person that she's calling to or touching is wearing a black Terran armor and the Terran sword with the globe and things like that.
So they're going to this planet called Hunhao, which is the name is from the Mayan god of the underworld, by the way. So they're going to basically Hades or hell.
And there's a ship graveyard around it, so it's very appropriate for the Mayan god of the underworld. and Burnham says that these ship graveyards are all over the place because of the burn.
Mm-hmm.
And so then why aren't black boxes all over the place because of the burn? Why don't you just hang out in some ship graveyards and ship grave rob to get what you want?
Well, there's got to be if the ships were not completely blasted into bits with the burn, then they must all have black boxes in them. So why are they so rare? That's a good question. Anyway,
but they're pretty small, so whether or not you can find them, I'm sure after 100 years, their little tracking beacons have gone out or something.
Although the hulls are fairly intact, so there must be in a Starfleet vessel. There must be a standard place.
If you know where it's located, you could go to that part of the wreckage.
Yeah, another little bit of oversight in the writing. Anyway, this is being run by some Orions. It's a salvage yard staffed by indentured servants, or essentially they're slaves.
Right. They're slaves.
Yeah. Well, they're paying off debts that they can never pay. So they're slaves.
Yeah, they're stuck for the rest of their life. At one point, I think it was Georgiou asked if they came from Beta 6. Which is the only planet in here that we've actually seen or at least heard of before in Star Trek. Comes from the Squire Gothos. The Enterprise was going to deliver supplies there before they got caught.
But before they got caught by Q. I mean, the whatever Trelane was.
Yeah, but that's literally the only planet that is mentioned anywhere in this episode that has any connection to any previous Star Trek, even remotely.
Hunhao, Argeth, they're all new names. So Georgiou is pretending to be a salvage buyer. So they're running a scam. They're running a bit, sort of a heist sort of thing. And Burnham is posing as her servant. And at one point when they're walking around through the salvage yard, Burnham says, we're looking to buy self-sealing stem bolts from the late 24th century, which anybody who remembers that DS9 episode will have a chuckle.
Chief O'Brien.
Self-sealing stem bolts, the great river, the Ferengi River of Commerce. I forget what it's called, but the self-sealing stem bolts. This is where they find Book. He has been enslaved. His friend, who was a Bajoran, was also enslaved with him, gets executed by head explosion for stealing a water ration. So we're establishing the ruthlessness and evilness of the Orions running it. The guy running this place has his job literally by nepotism. He is the nephew of the owner of the field of the yard.
So I like how Georgiou intimidates him into giving landing permission.
Yes.
And it's a really great scene with Georgiou. But then we have, in this kind of slave factory warehouse situation, he's a really bad manager.
Yeah.
Because this guy steals a water packet and he executes the guy over it, and he does this in this way that tortures him. Mm-hmm. He basically tells him, we haven't yet determined if the security field around this warehouse works or not. So if you run through it, your head might not blow up, but then I'm going to shoot you and force you to run towards it. And he runs towards it, and eventually his head blows off. And this is the sacrificial character to show us the stakes. Okay, fine. But executing someone over a water ration, that is not, I mean, okay, in countries where slavery exists or has existed, they didn't execute slaves over a water ration.
Right.
They're too valuable. They're sources of labor. You don't just kill somebody because they took a water ration because they were thirsty when you hadn't given them permission to. But I mean, they might discipline them, but they don't kill them. So either they have an endless supply of slaves, so they actually don't have value, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Or this guy is in extreme fear of loss of control and is taking unreasonable steps to try to ensure continued control that will actually prove counterproductive. And that's actually the better reading of this situation, because that's exactly what then proceeds to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, none of these slaves should be necessary anyway because they've got droids.
Right. Right.
Well, and I mean, they got to show him as this sadistic, their life has absolutely no value whatsoever. And even though he keeps getting basically taken out by Georgiou, but still.
Yeah. I think what they're clearly establishing him as this incompetent manager who only has his job because his aunt owns the place. So we all immediately know what kind of character he is and that he's an idiot, sort of thing. And he's going to be clearly overmatched by Georgiou and Burnham quite quickly. There is another character that's here in Orion. I mean, it's an Andorian who has had his antenna removed by the owner of this salvage yard, Osira. We never see her, but he was, and he is forced to. He had led a revolt, or at least an
attempted to do an uprising against the Emerald Chain.
Yes. Basically. And as punishment, he has been forced to become their tool of enslavement. His job is to implant these control pods that explode your head if you run away in the necks of the slaves. And thus they hate him for being a collaborator, which doesn't make sense because he's...
So an interesting connection with him. His name's Rin is the name of the character, played by Noah Averbach-Katz, who happens to be the husband of Mary Wiseman, also known as Tilly.
Oh, it's Tilly's...
This is Tilly's husband.
Oh, okay.
He's way taller than her.
Yeah.
It happens. Some of us have tall spouses.
Not a
so
I like... Yeah, I like the idea that his antenna have been cut off. I mean, that's horrific,
right?
That would be like being blinded in one eye or rendered deaf in one ear to us, and so that's some effective alien body horror. Also, I like how and it varies from one Andorian to another, but he's got this really, really blue skin. Which I think is cool.
Yep.
He's got this long white hair, which is okay, fine. And then he's got this really weak beard.
Yeah.
And I'm going,
pretty scraggly.
I mean, go big or go home, dude. I mean, you could be rocking this Papa Smurf look and you're just not cutting it.
Yes, that would be good. Papa Smurf. It turns out that by the way, that Noah Averbach-Katz is his mom was a big time Trekkie, and she dragged him to all kinds of Star Trek conventions, and that's what helped him. He helped Mary Wiseman audition for Discovery because of all the Star Trek knowledge. He's also the dungeon master for the cast and crew Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Just so you know,
that's awesome.
A little bit of background.
Yeah, it sounds like he's pretty much a geek himself, and this was. You look at his Twitter timeline, and he talks about how this was huge honor for him to be even just one episode. And how many of us as Star Trek fans even just have the walk on roll where you just walk down the corridor of the ship somewhere,
right?
And that's literally your 5 seconds on Star Trek would be like, I was on Star Trek.
Yeah, totally. So back on Discovery, we get this scene.
Meanwhile, Mary Sue, Adira, has changed stuff around. Yes, fixed everything and changed the spore drive without permission so that it no longer requires Stamets's arm shunts to use it.
Yep.
So that raises the question. So why do we need Stamets anymore? Is there something special about him?
He still needs a connection.
Yeah.
He still needs the connection with the tardigrade DNA. But what this does, instead of going, injecting, a Matrix style into his forearm, instead he puts his hand in this cyber gel that makes the same connection. The
telepathic gel from the TARDIS.
Yeah.
It's just what it looks like. Meanwhile, no one has noticed Burnham's absence in all this time. Like the first officer is missing.
Until Tilly finds the cat.
Right. The cat
in her quarters.
In her quarters. Right. Saru admits he hasn't mistrusted. He's talking to Tilly, and he admits to her that he hasn't mistrusted Burnham this much since the Shenzhou incident at the Battle of the Binary Stars. And it's Tilly of all people who tells him that Burnham, she takes his side. And
yeah, she tells him, you've totally got to go to the Admiral and throw Michael under the bus.
Yes. She's put you in an impossible position. And so Tilly, being a good Starfleet officer, as we know she is.
Well, I like where she tries to do if I was in the same position, and Saru's like, no, you wouldn't. You wouldn't do the same thing.
Right. You wouldn't
even come close.
Yeah.
But Tilly makes the excellent point. If you don't tell the Admiral and he finds out from anybody other than you, he's going to read you as covering for Michael, and that's going to tarnish everybody on this ship. Yep. Because we're still earning our place in Starfleet, and he's going to view us all through the lens of Michael Burnham if you don't distance all of us from Michael Burnham.
Right.
Which I think this is a good move for the show. This is the second episode now where she's getting taken down a notch.
Yep.
And it does end up literally being taken down a notch, at least in the hierarchy of the ship.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing for the show. I mean, they're not going to make her a secondary character after this point.
No,
but
she's still the lead. But they've always said they're in this series. It's not about the captain. It's about the people lower down on the ranks of the ship.
Right.
And so clearly she'll never be captain. Well, I never say never, but not in the short term. Anyway.
She may mutiny at some point, maybe later this season.
Yeah.
It's given the way things are going, I wouldn't rule it out. Meanwhile, speaking of mutinies, Georgiou and Burnham, they engineer a slave revolt led by Booker, and they end up disabling the Orion leader. His name's Tolor. And in the midst of this,
that's like a kind of chocolate chewy candy, right?
Yes, Tolor.
Exactly.
He's the Toblerone of Orions. So he's they're back on Booker's ship, and meanwhile, as Burnham is fighting with him, Georgiou is supposed to come to her rescue, and she's again disabled temporarily by this PTSD or whatever it is. These flashbacks are, and at one point,
and it's crucial that she help because. Right. Michael is keeping Toblerone, busy, but they need to get the clicker from his clothing to turn off the slave head blowing up field.
Yes,
because the slaves are now leaving as part of the jailbreak, and their heads will blow up if they don't turn off the head blowing up field.
Yes.
Well, and it shows how incompetent this guy is when Georgiou mentions the remote control for it, he keeps touching it under his, in his breast pocket of his jacket.
To make sure it's there.
Yeah, it's still here. Yeah, it's not in my office. It's sitting right here.
Yeah, totally. At one point in one of her flashbacks, I have a note that she does say the name or word San, S-A-N.
Yes.
So perhaps the name of the person whose body is
that's what I was thinking, that it was either like a loved one or somebody that she was really close to
or betrayed.
That was killed tragically or betrayed
stepped over to get to
So as the jailbreak is occurring, you have all these people running and shooting at each other, and Rin takes a hit for Book.
Jumps in
at
front.
one point. And gets injured. Also, you've got Michael. So Michael and Georgiou get control of Book's ship. They defeat Toblerone, and then and they take down the field. And then they're driving in some very Star Wars-esque cinematography. They have his ship flipped on its side, flying through a narrow space, just like in Empire Strikes Back. And as it's going, it's shooting the guards who are shooting the escaped slaves. And there's a really cool moment where it zooms in front of everybody and comes apart and reassembles itself in a new configuration.
Yes. Yeah,
which was really cool. I couldn't help wondering though, why are the Emerald Chain goons continuing to try to stop the jailbreak? Once the giant laser firing spaceship shows up in the sky, why aren't they fleeing for cover?
Right.
Yeah.
Apparently these guys do not care about dying, just like in the first episode of the season where they kept chasing them right into the weapons fire and getting disintegrated. These guys just have no fear of dying, apparently.
Well, I mean, it does create the opportunity for some great special effects where, when it's a direct hit, they just get vaporized. There's nothing there.
Dust.
They're gone.
This black smoke where they're standing. Anyway, after everything is resolved and everyone gets away, Burnham does confront Georgiou about her seizures of whatever it is and tries to get her to trust her to help her, whatever is causing this. And she says, like, you're not in the Terran universe anymore. You can trust me. And
a vulnerability is not a death sentence, she says.
Right. And she kind of throws it back at her like, yeah, I remember someone just like you who looked and sounded just like you once giving her my trust and having her betray me, like her mirror, like Burnham's mirror universe counterpart did. So that I can see where she might have some trust issues, like getting over that.
It is nice to see Georgiou vulnerable, though.
Yes.
I mean, as much fun as Georgiou is because of how much salt she's carrying around.
Yeah.
It is nice to see her vulnerable, too.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, Toblerone does escape, so we may see him again at some point.
Yeah, as soon as she grabs his, as soon as
the clicker?
Georgiou grabs his clicker,
yeah,
he immediately hits his personal transporter and disappears.
Right.
Yeah.
His aunt, Auntie Osiris, is probably not going to be all that happy with him, but we'll see how that goes for him. Meanwhile,
be interesting if we see him again, but it's just his head on a pike.
That should be, yeah. Meanwhile, back on Discovery, Stamets talks to Mary Sue, who's talking to herself. Adira in the lunchroom, who appears to be talking to herself. And I do like that they don't go in the usual direction where it's like there's something mentally, she has mental imbalance or something. He just kind of says, look, my husband was dead and came back to life, so I'm willing to believe whatever, and we're 1,000 years in the future. I'm willing to believe whatever you tell me is going on. So
I was going to say, have you looked at how things have gone on this ship? I mean, mental illness would probably be the sanest explanation of the bunch.
Right. She does explain that she's carrying her boyfriend's soul in the symbiont,
or she's having an experience of Gray's presence, and that's what Stamets figures out, that she's having something going on, and she acknowledges really quickly that she is experiencing Gray as if Gray is still present with her, and she speculates it's because she's a human. And maybe human trill joinings don't work quite the same way.
Right.
Or at least they're not in her case.
Yes.
But then they proceed to have this conversation and about their respective abilities, and it becomes so Mary Sue so fast.
Yeah.
Where she is talking to Stamets about how, he's really essential to the ship. Mm-hmm. And she says, you're kind of like the bomb, meaning you're really good and essential.
Yeah.
And he says, well, I was until you showed up.
Right. Mary Sue.
And so, Mary Sue. And
I wonder how they're gonna be able to handle this, though. No show can handle having two Mary Sues. The two Mary Sues are gonna rip the show apart.
Right.
I mean, it's like two black holes getting on either side of a planet. It's just gonna rip the planet apart. Well, in the same way, two Mary Sues will just rip the ship apart.
Wait, who's the other Mary Sue that we're talking about? Is
Michael.
Michael. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And they continue to pound the Mary Sue theme in a later scene where she has allegedly miraculously removed Stamets' arm shunts.
Right.
And it's like, wait. Because he now can just stick his hands in the goo.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I took that.
Hang on. Couldn't Culber remove the arm shunts and regenerate that flesh? It obviously was not impacting his ability to use his hands, so the muscles are all still there, and it's just a cosmetic thing with the dermal regenerator, and consequently, Culber should be able to do this, and instead he's marveling over Adira, and she's only 16, he says. So we're just hammering the Mary Sue quality of this character.
I'm sorry, I'm going to disagree with your entire rant, because they didn't imply that Adira actually removed the shunts, but that she made it able to have them removed. He's talking to Culber. Culber could have been the one to do it anyways. At no point did they say that she actually had the shunts removed, but that she made it eligible or made it available to do it.
Actually, no. They, at the end of the mess hall scene, she takes Stamets' arm. Now, she's already done the space goo.
Yeah.
So that made the shunts unnecessary. Mm-hmm. But then she takes his arm and has his sleeve up and is looking at the shunt and says, I think I can help you with this.
Right.
So the implication is I can now remove the shunts, having already rendered them unnecessary in a previous scene.
Right.
I took that differently, but anyway.
I took it the way Jimmy did.
No.
I mean, and that's what the bug me is like, well, wouldn't the Culber, or at least the Dr. Pollard, the chief medical officer, have done the surgery involved? Like, it just seems strange.
Well, anyway.
Yeah. But nevertheless, it's still the 16-year-old girl who makes it possible for Stamets to be whole again.
Well, she's a Trill, and of course, Trills know everything.
Right.
By the way, one thing I think we forgot about when we were talking about her being able to see her boyfriend is this actually has been seen before when Ezri Dax was having to deal with the memories of Duran, the evil Dax host. She actually did see him in this way, where it wasn't like he took over somebody else's body, but she actually saw him in the room and interacted with him in the room. So
she did the rite of emergence to bring that about, though. And Adira is not doing the rite of emergence.
Yeah, is not doing the rite of emergence.
But it's the same effect.
It's the same effect. So I mean, it's there isn't without precedent. It's just
true.
Why the question now is, why is this an ongoing thing versus a one time deal?
I'm kind of hoping that there's a bigger reason than just she's human and carrying a Trill symbiont, that there is some external force that's involved here.
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be. Their love was so strong.
I'd rather just be like a bad guy doing something, frankly.
Like this is actually some like alien being that's infecting her mind or something.
Yeah, or whatever's responsible for the burn or something. That there's more to it than just our love.
That'd be nice, but I don't see it.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
So meanwhile, Michael and the Blob Whisperer have their first kiss.
Yes, the most unsurprising development in this whole season is that they are, they actually are romantically involved. Yeah, I guess.
Although again, you have Linus popping in the middle of it because you have to have that awkward moment.
We need the comedy interruption of the romantic moment. Yeah. At least he doesn't sneeze in their face as he does it, which would. So now. Perhaps the most satisfying scene in this episode is Vance dressing down both Saru and Burnham. Saru for not coming to him, as I said in the beginning, with this new intel so that he can, as Commander-in-Chief of Starfleet, make decisions for everyone's good. That's his job. So, and then he dresses down Burnham, of course, for going rogue, and leaves her punishment up to Saru, which I think...
he also says the only reason you're not in the brig is that you saved lives.
Yes, right.
So he would have taken action if that had not occurred.
Right.
But since it did occur, he's going to let Saru deal with her.
Yes, and then his punishment is I can't trust you anymore, so you're no longer first officer. You're just going to be chief science officer. And then she says, Saru, you're doing the right thing. At which point he should respond, I don't need you to tell me I'm doing the right thing. I'm the captain, and I just need you to do what I tell you to do. That's the end of it. But he doesn't.
Or it actually would have been good or something that's like, you might want to learn what that looks like.
Right.
Some little slam where it's like, yeah, and you don't.
Yes. But I did really like that scene with Vance. I'm actually really starting to like Vance as a character.
Well, I like, especially since he doesn't even really dress her down. It's like, now, what do you think I'm about to tell you?
Yes, that's a very.
And then every
moment.
time it's like, you're absolutely right, and you know better than this.
Yes.
And so after Saru, at least for the moment, demotes Michael, our very last thing before we fade to black is Michael takes off her comm badge. And that is likely a symbolic action of her at some point later this season leaving Starfleet.
Possibly even next episode by the looks of some of the previews.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they've been hinting at it. I mean, clearly the character has been 1 foot out the door this whole season. In a sense, she's not been acting like a Starfleet officer. She's been acting on her own. So clearly she's been heading that way. So that's interesting. The question is then, who's going with her? What ramifications will that have for the larger story? That sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see. Anything else to say? Any other notes on this episode, Father Cory?
Well, of course, with the detachment cells of the Discovery, I wonder if they're going to show them reattaching before they jump. It'd be kind of interesting, to have that kind of where they have to reattach and then the ship can jump.
Yep.
Some of the new uniforms look like the motion picture uniforms. The one that the lieutenant that was training up the Discovery crew looked like updated versions of the white TMP bodysuits with the little fake belt buckle.
Yep.
You keep talking about the Bajoran exchange. I wonder if they'll ever touch on how the Bajorans went from being, the wormhole front door to this massive trading organization, if you will. Yeah. Trading post.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to see that.
Cool. Jimmy?
I thought this episode was less stupid than other recent episodes.
I agree. I like this one too. Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I did.
Yeah, there was a lot more. I mean, is it any coincidence that it had a lot more Georgiou in it than other recent episodes?
Actually, for me, that was not it. It was just the number. In fact, I was concerned when they made this a Georgiou Michael, buddy pick.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I mean, I knew that Georgiou would be enjoyable, but it's not what makes me think this is less stupid. I think they just have, even though there were logic gaps in this, there were fewer than in other recent episodes.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing as I watched it. Like, this was less, had less problems. I think part of it is also there was less Adira in it. And frankly, I kind of find that it's the Wesley syndrome. You've got this kid who solves everything. And why do we need a Starfleet crew? So it's that same problem. So we had less of that, although she's still there causing problems. But yeah. And like you said, fewer of the logic, rational explanation problems of the writing of the last couple episodes. The first 2 episodes of this season were great. The next few were not as good, but this one is better. Back, and I hope we get more of that.
So next week, the Romulans and Vulcans get together and decide to make a civilization.
Yeah, Unification 3, which is interesting. That's the title of it. So we'll have to see. Because as we said before, Unification 1 and 2 were the TNG episodes about Spock's mission to bring them together. So maybe the Romulans and the Vulcans have finally fixed things up and they're back together again. We haven't seen any Vulcans in New Starfleet, have we?
No.
So that's interesting.
And there's some speculation that the Vulcans were one of the first to break away from the Federation.
They never liked us anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Those Vulcans. Anyway, I guess that's a preview for next time. So let's wrap things up here and take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Stephen B., Irving N., Jacob J., Jacqueline B., and Kathy N. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So what did you think of this episode of Discovery Scavengers? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek or our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. And as we said, we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next episode, Unification 3. Until then, Father Cory Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, Dom.
And Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thank you, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, salvage this.